So we're learning, this is the first Maimed in Torah Or of Purim. It's a pretty long Maimed, and it has two biyurim, a commentary and then a second commentary. We're going to start with the Maimed and we'll see how it goes. In the meantime, we're learning the Maimed. We'll see how this all plays itself out to Mitzvah Hashem over the foreseeable period. But I want to begin with a couple of Purim Dika Maisis. The first is a story with the Mittel Rebbe. We know that the Alter Rebbe was a Balkeda. Alter Rebbe used to read the Torah himself. And the Alter Rebbe's Kriyas HaTorah was extraordinary. It was very, very, very bediuk, incredibly precise. It's brought down that the Alter Rebbe would repeat a pasuk to correct a shini in the taimim, a shini in the trop, which you don't have to do at all. And you can be assured that the Alter Rebbe made a shini in the trop. It's not because he made a mistake or he forgot. There were other cheshbenis. It was very, very precise. The Baditchev Harav, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Baditchev at Amal Gezogt, spoke to the Baruch Mezhbosher, who was the Baal Shem Tov's grandson and a very, very strong critic of the Alter Rebbe. So the Baditchev said to the Baruch Mezhbosh, Ich weiß nicht, was wilt von mein Mechuten. I don't know what you want from my Mechuten, from the Alter Rebbe. Ich hab ihm gehört lehen, and I heard him read the Torah. Und ist gewesen Kulei Lamata und hat nicht ausgelost kein ein Tag. Ist gewesen Kulei Lamaila und hat nicht ausgelost kein ein Tag Lamata. He was Kulei Lamaila, completely in the heavens, and he didn't omit a crown Lamata. So the Alter Rebbe's Kriyas HaTorah was very, very precise. And of course, the Mittel Rebbe was used to hearing his father lane, like you have the story in the Yem Yem about the Teichacha and so forth. And when Alter Rebbe was nostalgic, the Alter Rebbe didn't lane anymore. Alter Rebbe passed with Chavdala Tevis, yeah? 2 months later was Purim. So a Balkeda, other than the Alter Rebbe, read the Megilas Esther. After the Megila, the Mittel Rebbe went over to him and said to him, "Oh, Azar Sheina Maise, what a great story. I never heard such a story in my life. Azar Sheina Maise, what a wonderful drama. I never heard such a drama." So the Chassid, the Balkeda, was obviously taken aback. And he said to Mittel Rebbe, the Mittel was 40 years old, yeah? You hear that story every year? He says, no, this story I never heard. The Maise Bakem again. Because when the Alter Rebbe laned, you heard a very, very different story of the Megillah, as we're going to get to momentarily. That's one vart, one sipur. And the second vart is also with the Mittel Rebbe. It involves Mittel Rebbe. It's a Chassidishe Parshah here. That the Mittel Rebbe was traveling once, and it says where he was. Maybe it was Kremenchuk, but I don't remember. Mittel Rebbe was traveling. And when came Purim, so there was a big shul, and a lot of guests came to be with the Rebbe, the Mittel Rebbe. And they asked the Mittel Rebbe who should read the Megilas Esther, who should read the Megillah. And there are a number of candidates. And the Mittel Rebbe pointed to a particular Yid, a Malamed, that he should read the Megillah. This Malamed was a Chassidishe Yid, very Chassidishe Yid. And in the Megilas Esther, you have that moment where Haman comes into Achashverosh thinking he wants to hang Mordechai. And before he gets a chance to speak, Achashverosh speaks to him. And he says to him, Ma'alasa is ba'ish asher ha-melech chafetz bikarer. What should be done to a person whom the king, the melech, wishes to honor? So the Megillah says, Vayemer Haman belibe. Haman said to himself in his own heart, Lemi yachpetz ha-melech lasais yikar yesher mimeni. Who would the king wish to give honor to, preciousness to, more than I? In other words, he was a very, very big balgaiva, was very, very self-assured. And he was convinced that the king wants to honor somebody, it has to be him. So of course he proposed what we're going to be learning in this Maamar Yaveu Levush Malchus, Asher Lavash BeHamelech, Vesus, Asher Rochav Alav HaMelech, V'Asher Niten Kesem Malchus Bereishit. And of course the next pasuk says, V'Nosna Levush Vasus, Al Yadish Meisari Apartamim, V'Elbishu Es Ish HaMelech Chafetz Bikari, V'Karu Lafon of Kochi Asal Ish, Asher HaMelech Chafetz Bikari. Haman is convinced that Achashverosh wants to honor somebody, it's him. So he makes this very, very grandiose proposal. He should take the king's crown and the king's tunic and the king's horse, and that one of the most prominent men of the kingdom should dress him in the tunic of the king and put him on the horse of the king, and then the second time around the crown is omitted because Achashverosh began to cringe. I'll get to this momentarily. And this minister should march through the streets saying this is what's done to a person, kocha, also lo ish, to a man, asher hamelech chafetz bikar, the king desires his honor. And of course, the rest of the story, of course, is that Achashverosh says to Haman, Mahir kachas Levush, v'esasuska shadibalta al Paltiel davar, and do it to Mordechai, and this was the beginning and the end for Haman. But this particular passage has an arrogance which has few equals in the entire Tanakh, where Haman says to himself, the Torah testifies, that Haman says to himself, L'mi yachbetz hamelech la'aseh yekor yeser mimeni. So the Malamud was reading the Megila, and obviously was paying attention to Pshutei Shel Mikra, to Ivrim Etayj. So when he got to this pasuk, where it says, L'mi mach yachbetz hamelech la'aseh yekor yeser mimeni, again Magishrei, he cried out, Feh klippe, Feh klippe. Chassidishe Yid, Feh yesh klippe. And he continued to read. Now it's Yadua, it's very well known, that the Mittel Rebbe had a deep intolerance for his spoilers. Not only his slahavos, but even his spoilers. His avoida was that you show on the outside nothing. Kalten brand, as the expression is used by Moshe Rabbeinu. Then on the outside is ice, and on the inside is fire. And he expected of his chassidim the same, that they should serve their Eibishter in a way there should be no tumul, no rash, and no shturim, and no nothing. So when this chassid exclaimed in the middle of the Megillah, Feh klippe, all the chassidim present were certain that the next day the Mittel Rebbe would not let him read the Megillah again, because he crossed a line that the Mittel Rebbe didn't allow people to cross. Comes the next morning, the day of Purim, the Mittel Rebbe comes to shul, and everyone is waiting for the Mittel Rebbe to replace the Balkriya with somebody else. And the Mittel Rebbe says that he should go again, which was a big surprise. Because knowing the Mittel Rebbe's preciseness and the Mittel Rebbe's exactness, and the Mittel Rebbe was a Gvuredik Rebbe, it was not believable that he would give this person, so to speak, a second chance. Anyway, he chose him to read the Megillah again, and he went and he read the Megillah, and so on. I don't know if the next day he said again Feh klippe. I would imagine that he was able to control himself. After davening, the Mittel Rebbe turns around and he says, Medaf toch geb Megillah geld. It's a minig yisol terehi to give Megillah geld. It's an Indian to give money to the Balkeda, Megillah geld. And the Mittel Rebbe put on a golden arendel. A golden arendel, a gold coin, a chveis, is like $1,000 or it's a lot of money, $500. It's not $10 or even $50. It was a very, very substantial. In that minyan, there were 100 ashidim, 100 yidden who were well-to-do. And if the Mittel Rebbe put on a golden arendel, they could not be outdone. So they each put down a golden arendel. And this Malamed became wealthy in a day, Pashat Kipchuta, in a day. Later, the Mittel Rebbe explained that everybody who suspected that he would replace the Balkeda is right, that in the normal conditions he would have chosen somebody else to lay by day because of this outburst. But this Malamed had a bracha for the Alter Rebbe for Ashiras. Alter Rebbe, your bracha should be wealthy. But if you're going to be an Ashir, you have to make a kli to become rich, to do something. And he was a Malamed, and he didn't think past Malamdis. So there was not a possibility for the bracha of the Alter Rebbe to be mature, to be realized. So the Mittel Rebbe said, I wanted that the Alter Rebbe's bracha shouldn't be for naught. So b'meila, therefore, I overlooked this outburst, allowed him to read the Megillah by day, so I was able to give him Megillah geld, and then the rest of the Gevirim also gave him Megillah geld. And Misham Nesashe, this was the beginning of the Ashiras, of this Yid, I just want to tell one more story. It's really not a story, it's a vort that is extraordinary from our Rebbe. There are, of course, many, many Purim stories with the Rebbe. The most famous of all is the Ma'is of Tafshin Yud Gimel with Stalin, Yamach Shmei V'Zechrei, where the Rebbe later, many, many years later, 38 years later, in 1991, in Tafshin and Aleph, acknowledged in an edited text that what Chassidim thought was a fact, that the Maamar had to do with the Nefilas Atzeder at that time, Yamach Shmei Stalin. But that's not the story that I'm going to share. What I want to share is as follows. The first Purim of the Rebbe's Nesias, was Tafshin Yud Aleph, obviously. And the Fabrengen was very intimate. The Eilim was very small. I mean, the small Eilim on Lubavitch lasted a relatively short time, a year or two or three. But at that time, the Eilim was still, it was Pashat Hamish. It was like a kiddush, a shul mit Chassidim and a Rebbe, but it was so small, so intimate that the grandeur that comes along from the Reiv Am Hadas Melech was not present. But the Rebbe was there clearly, and then of course there were Chassidishe Yidden, and the Rebbe took a lot of mashke, a gewalt mit mashke, kedarke b'kedesh, and a lot of the Chassidim said l'chaim, including Rabbi Mentlik. Rabbi Mentlik got shiker. The Rebbe, Rabbi Mentlik was such a bottled the career that Rabbi Mentlik was in a state of his pashtus, and the Rebbe expressed himself something to the effect as mottel. That's what the Rebbe calls Rabbi Mentlik, mottel. As mottel is holding in this madrege, that's extraordinary. There's a story about that which happened at that Fabrengen. But what I want to share is this. Ubagdoma. For the first year after the Frierdiker passed away, the Rebbe did not say any Maimorim. And Chassidim asked, and the Rebbe didn't respond. The Rebbe used to say, in dem inyan vet eichet zayin hashina, there would be a change. The Rebbe once told Rabbi Simpson, es darf doch nicht sein dafke itzter, it doesn't have to be now, it could be at a later date, and so on. But Yud Shvat, Tov Shin, Yud Alf, the Rebbe said a Maamar Basi Legani. But the Maamar Basi Legani, the Rebbe said in the middle of a Sikha. Right? You could see the Hanocha, and you could also hear the tape. The Rebbe begins, in the Maamar was the Rebbe hat reis gegeben for sein Yem HaHilula, hebt on Basi Legani, right? And the Maamar the Rebbe gave out for his Hilula, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out for his Hilula, he begins Basi Legani, and then the Rebbe begins Basi Legani Achesi Kala, and so on. If you look in the Anochas, if you look in the Sichas, which are of course now all published, you will see that that's how the Maimorim were for that entire year. There was no niggin before Dach, there was no song niggin before Chassidus. The Rebbe would say a Sicha, and then after speaking the Sicha, he would segue from the Sicha into the Maamar. The first time the Rebbe asked for a niggin, Kedem Dach, was Yud Beis, the following Yud Shvat, Tov Shin, Yud Beis, the Rebbe asked for a niggin, and they sang a niggin, and the Rebbe said a Maamar. But until then, that year, the Seder was the Rebbe would start speaking a Sicha, and then at some point the Sicha would go into the Maamar. Sometimes the Sicha was literally a line, mamish avort, and sometimes the Sicha was a few minutes. One of the most poignant of these pre-Maamar Sichas, and the Seder by the Rebbe at that time was, the Maamar would be at the beginning of the Fabrengen. The Rebbe actually once explained why he does it. The Maamar for quite a few years was at the very beginning of the Fabrengen, and the Rebbe said why? Because a Maamar is difficult and you have to concentrate. So he wants to get the Maamar out of the way so people can relax and enjoy the Fabrengen, because the most intense part of the Fabrengen, which is the Amidas Dach, has already been done. And of course, in the years later, that changed completely, where the Maamar would not be the first Sicha, it would be one of the earlier Sichas, but not the first Sicha. And then much, much later, the Maamar could have been near the end of the Fabrengen Mamish. But in the beginning, that was the Seder. So Purim, of that year, Purim Tavshin, there's actually a tape. There's not a tape of the whole Fabrengen, which is a tape of much of the Fabrengen, a part of the Fabrengen. And you can hear the tape of the very beginning of the Fabrengen. And this is what the Rebbe said. And you have to listen to the audio because it's so moving, it's so powerful when you hear it in the original. And there's a tape of it. You don't have to just read it. You can listen to the Rebbe speaking. I'm going to chazir it, but it's not at all the same thing, of course. The Rebbe began by saying that in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, our minhag is that we say in the davening uvachein, right? In the bracha of Ata Kodesh, you say v'chein tein kovid, v'chein tein pachtacha, v'chein tein kovid, v'chein yiskadesh. So in many Sidurim, there's only 3 of v'cheins. In our Siddur, there's a 4th of a chen. And if I'm not wrong, it's the first. My memory is not working so good. The v'chein tein pachtacha is the second. The v'chein tein kavod lamecha is the third. V'chein yiskadesh is the 4th. What's the first one? I can't remember. But there's a 4th of a chen. And in many Nuschais HaTfilah, they don't say the 4th of a chen. We do. So it says in the Zohar that the 4 of a chen, or the 3 of a chen, or the 4th of a chen, which you have in the Daven in Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, is based on the fact that in Tanakh, you have the word uvachein 4 times, which is something which you see in some Sfarim. The Tur is, of course, famous for this. The Tur, Baal Turim, is famous when a word is written in the Torah. He tells you how many times it's in the Tanakh, and each time it's there, and there's great precision to this. It's Torah, it ain't safe. So the Zohar said that because in Tanakh there's 4 uvacheins, therefore there's 4 uvacheins in the davening of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So what is the reason that we say it and other people don't? Because the 4th uvachein is the uvachein from the Megilas Esther, where Esther Hamalka says to Mordechai that she should gather the Jewish people together and they should fast and they should do tshuva and so on. And then she says, Gaman even not a will also fast. Uvachein Avei El HaMelech Asher Leich Hadas. And therefore, and under those circumstances, I'm going to approach the king Asher Leich Hadas unlawfully. And the king may kill me, and the king may embrace me, but I'm going to go. So this uvachein is Avei El HaMelech Asher Leich Hadas, unlawful. So the way it's understood is that in the Megilas Esther, I'm going to talk about this momentarily. In the Megilas Esther, HaMelech means the Eibishter. In the Megilas Esther, Bechlal, HaMelech means, the Gemara says HaMelech means the Eibishter. And of course it says also in Sfarim that Achashverosh also means the Eibishter, because Achashverosh is from the words HaMelech She'achris V'reishis Shalei. The end and the beginning is his. And Chassidus such as Chosh V'rosh, to speak and to be silent. We learned it last year, I think, in the Maamar that we did for Purim in these classes here. So HaMelech goes on the Eibishter. And Esther says to Mordechai, Avei El HaMelech Asher Leich Hadas, that Esther HaMalka, which goes on Yidden, and specifically Yidden as they're on the Matzav of Golus, says to Mordechai, I'm going to go to the king even though it's Leich Hadas, I'm not worthy. So therefore, some Kehilas Kadishas B'Yisrael don't say this, because you don't want to say that you're coming to the king Leich Hadas without zchus, without deserving it. But our minig is, based on this zayah, that we dafka say the 4th of the Chanin. And again, if I'm not wrong, the 4th of the Chanin is the first. The first one of the Chanin is Kaddish. That's what it goes. The Chanin is Kaddish. Then is the Chanin tein Pachtacha. Then is the Chanin tein Kovid. And the Chanin Tzadikim. That's the 4th. But the first one is the Chanin is Kaddish. And this Chanin is Kaddish, I believe, is the added one. Dafka first. So the Rebbe says that the Zohar says that there's a v'chein of Hashanah Yom Kippur, which is Asher Leich Hadas. And he explained that when it comes special times, and you have to approach the Eibishter, and it's Leich Hadas, you have no schus, you have no merit, you're not entitled, you're not deserving, you're not worthy. But when action sech, you insist and you force yourself to enter into the king, even if it's Asher Leich Hadas, so that they let you in. In other words, then you're not tshuva, then you're not tzara, the inyan ha-b'tochin, the inyan of Yiddish akshanas. That's what the Rebbe explains basically. And when the Rebbe said it, he said it very, very emotionally, with incredible amount of regesh, when he made this exposition. And then, after the Rebbe spoke, it must have been 5 or 6 or 7 minutes, the Rebbe says, Uvachein, Avei El HaMelech Asher Leich Hadas, and then he right away begins the Maamar, Veki b'layhu demes asher echelu laseis, and the first time the Rebbe starts, he breaks down, and then he calms down, he catches himself for a few seconds, and he starts a second time, and he says a Maamar, Purim Tafshin Yud Aleph, and that Maamar is Kulei Chiddush, that's really the Rebbe's Maamar. You cannot say it's a Maamar based on the earlier Rabbeim, even though it's officially based on the Maamar of Pei Zayin. In any case, this is the Hakdama, stories about Purim. Now let's talk about Purim itself. Purim, it says in Tikkun Ezer, is compared to Yom Kippur. Moreover, not only is Purim compared to Yom Kippur, that we actually say that Yom Kippur is Yom Kippurim, that Purim is higher and that Yom Kippur is lower, and it's only that Yom Kippur is a day like Purim. This says in Zohar, in Tikkun Ezer. And of course, this becomes very, very problematic, very difficult to understand. How could you compare a day when people are like Malachim, with Chamishi Nuyim and all the rest, to a day of Mishteh, Simche, and Mishleach Mones, and Matanos Lavyenim, and Adalayade? Purim, the antithesis is the other extreme of what the Yom Kippur is. So of course there's a number of very, very important corollaries between Purim and Yom Kippur. And the most obvious is Goydel. Right, in the Chumash, they would choose 2 goats, 2 seirim, and they would use a Goydel. Which one is going to be La Hashem, which one is going to be La Zozah. And of course, the point is that what difference does it make? The two goats are shekel. They cost the same amount of money. They look the same. They're the same size. Who cares which one? And they dafka used a goydel, and they used golden ptakim, golden papers, notes. And one was written Lazozel, and one was written Hashem, and they put them into a kilfi, into a hat, and then King Kohen would pull them out and put them on each goat. And there was a special maile, a special schus, if the one on the right had Lashem and the one on the left had Lazozel. So it's explained in Chassidus that the goydel of Yom Kippur was not about the fact that they couldn't figure out another way to choose which goat, but has to do with the inyan that the Eibishter on Yom Kippur relates to the Yidden from the Madrega of goydel. And from the Madrega of goydel, Yidden are all wonderful and all perfect and all extraordinary and so forth and so on. And Purim, of course, also involves a goydel. Haman HaRasha throws a goydel. The way you understand this story based on the Gemara and so on is that the goydel that Haman HaRasha throws is what we call in our culture the Venapechu. It's the basis for the incredibleness. Why? Because Haman calculates. What does he calculate? He calculates that anybody who tries to hurt the Jewish people, because the Jewish people's sin failed. Before him you had Nebuchadnezzar, and you had Madayim Paros, and you had Mitzrayim, you had a lot of Goyim, and you had Sancherev, Ashur, who tried to destroy the Jewish nation, and they failed. So Haman reasoned that you could never destroy the Jewish people based on their demerits, because the Eibishter loves them. So he decided instead to throw a goydel. Goydel is chance, and he'll see how it falls. If the goydel falls on a good day, then he will not destroy the Jewish people, because the Eibishter is telling him that he's going to protect them. And if the goydel falls on a bad day, then he's going to know the Eibishter is not paying attention, well, to destroy the Jewish people. And he throws a goydel, and it falls on Adar, and Haman is samach simcha gedel. What he's so excited about? Meis Rabbeinu died. And of course the question becomes that Meis Rabbeinu was also born in the Chaydish. So the answer is that Haman didn't know that. So of course the kasha is a pashat. If Haman or Mazla Delay knew when Meis Rabbeinu died, how could he not have known when Meis Rabbeinu was born? And the answer is he knew when Meis Rabbeinu was born. But he didn't think it was a big deal. Why? Because when you're born you're not a tzaddik. Only when you pass away you're a tzaddik. So Meis Rabbeinu was born on Zayin Adar Behechatesa, so it was yet to be determined whether he's a tzaddik or not. But what Haman did not know, lo yoda, is that Moshe is different than all tzaddikim. Moshe is different than all the tzaddikim. That kedai yema leida lechapal yema misa nismala abai is kula oira. In the case of Moshe Rabbeinu, because he was a nasi b'Yisrael and in Neshama Klolos, his birth is a gevaldika simcha. And this is what Haman didn't know. Haman didn't know that the birth of a rebbe is a schus, just like and even greater than perhaps, or in some ways, as the histalkos of a rebbe, because a tzaddik is born and the room is filled with light. That was his mistake. But he threw the goydel, and based on this goydel, he determined that the Eibishter was smiling at the Jewish people. He decided to do Rachmanos an Kloya. What's the fact? The fact is that this was the one occasion that if Haman had gone the other route, it would have worked. If Haman had gone the route of his predecessors to destroy the Jewish people based on their sins, it would have worked because of Nishtachvul Etzelem of Nebuchadnezzar and Nehenu Misudas Shalei Serosh. So that's the Venapechu. Haman does something different than all the predecessors before him because he saw their failure. And this was the one case where what they would have tried would have worked, but he tried something different and it failed. He throws a goydel, and on the Madrega of goydel, like it says in the Maamar Chassidus, Ach Esav Liyankev, Oyev es Yankev es Esav Sanesi, that Yankov and Esav are the same, and nevertheless, the Eibishter's love for Yankov and hatred for Esav is absolute because it comes from Madrega of goydel, which is Lamayla Mitam V'nas. And that's one of the basic similarities between Yom Kippur and Purim. Both of them have at their base Yom Kippur and the Avodah, and Purim in the story and in the name. Purim means Al Shem HaPur, Al Shem HaGoydel. The idea of Goydel, that the Eibishter's relationship to the Yidden is random and chance, also meaning to say that there's a Madrege where it's not logical the Eibishter favors the Jews and so on, and he prefers us mitzat Goydel, that is free choice. And that's one of the similarities between Purim and Yom Kippur. And of course the second one is, as you'll see momentarily in our Maimed, that they both have to do with Nesinas HaTorah, with the giving of the Torah. Yom Kippur has to do with Nesinas HaTorah, because the Eibishter gave us the luchas of Schneur, right? The first luchas were given on Shivas B'Tammuz and they were broken. And the second luchas were given on Yom Kippur. And the second luchas, which are given on Yom Kippur, are called the luchas of tshuva, right? Which responds to Yidden's doing tshuva. And Purim, Yidden said, Kimu v'kiblu, nasa v'nishma. They accept to do Yiddishkeit all over again. Kimu v'kiblu, masharechelu lasas. And the Gemara says that what Yidden started by Har Sinai, when they said nasa v'nishma, was culminated 1,000 years later when the Yidden in the darkest of times, in the worst of times, declared their loyalty to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that now the Torah is theirs for sure. And that's a second similarity between Yom Kippur and Purim. The first is the concept of Goylo, and the second is the concept of something having to do with accepting the Torah. However, it says in Maamar that there's a difference. What's the difference? By Yom Kippur, there was the element of Kafa Leim Har Kigigis. That the Eibishter revealed so much of himself that, so to speak, he took away their choice. He left them free will. But what kind of free will do you have if you see what a lakus is? The opposite is nothing, relatively speaking, and nothing absolutely. So obviously a Yid was going to choose Torah and mitzvahs and the Eibishter over the other derech. So there wasn't really free will. So the Gemara says, Mikan meidor rabba le'iraisa. Any Jew at any time can come along and say, I was forced. I was tricked when I accepted the Torah. I said Nasa v'nishma, Erev Matan Torah, but I said Nasa v'nishma because the Lakus was revealed. But only Hader Kiblua b'mei Achashverosh. That argument only works till time of Achashverosh. Why? Because the time of Achashverosh was exactly the opposite extreme. Anoichi Haster Aster Pane Bayemu, the Eibishter was hiding. And the Rebbe was speaking about Shem Tov, that the Hester is Alein Behester, the concealment is also concealed. And you think, it was a very dark gullus. And when Yidden reaffirmed, when Yidden committed themselves, when Yidden chose to accept the Torah, again, this did not have the element of kafalem hakikis. There was no coercion. Fakeret, if there was a coercion, the coercion was to run away and change your passport from Yehudi to Ivri, and Achashverosh would have left him alone. So Purim is the culmination of Yom Kippur, it's even higher. And that's the pshat, that Yom Kippur Purim, because Yom Kippur is only a beginning and Purim is an end. But in any case, the Chassidus of Purim is unbelievable. One of the ideas which is mentioned in a number of Maimorim is that Purim and Yom Kippur are exactly the same except for one factor. That Yom Kippur is this factor inside the box, inside the Beis HaMikdash, inside rigidity, inside order and control, like by tzaddikim. And Purim is the same intensity, but outside the box, as it is for Anashim Kerkenu, and so on and so forth, which is why Davoid is Adalayada, and so on and so on. That's just Purim. Now we know, you look at the Sichas Chelik Vav and other places, that the Megilas Esther never has the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The name of Hashem is never mentioned in the entire Sefer of the Megillah. And Hasbara Shebedavar is because the Megilas Esther is the place where Teva and Elokus converge. Why do you have to write the Eibish's name in the Sefer Torah? Because the Eibish is influencing the world. Now, what if there's a Hisgalus, that the world itself is Eibishter? Then the world is Eibishter, you don't have to say Havaya. And this can happen with Derech Nes. Hashem could reveal miracles in the world so that the world reflects the Eibishter. But it could also have a Derech Teva, that the world follows Elam Kimin Hageneg, what looks like a normal conduct of nature. Yet the way nature plays itself out turns out to be the greatest miracle of all, Neis HaMelubish B'Teva. A miracle which is totally concealed in nature, and yet you see clearly the Yad Hashem. So it says in the Rebbe Siches that the reason never, there is no mention of the Eibishter's name in the Megilas Esther, because every word is the Eibishter, the whole creation is the Eibishter. And that's the Chiddush of Megillah, put him, that the Teva itself becomes a Lakus. Now, I mentioned before that every time it says Hamelech, it means the Eibishter. It says in the Gemara. It also says in Svam, every time it says Achashverosh, it means the Eibishter, like it says, I think it's in the Sefer Me'eriyed, which is a Kabbalah Sefer, because of the principle of Achres V'Reishes Shalei, and so on. But when you read the Megillah, you read it as a story, as a narrative. One of the things which is interesting about Chassidus Bechlal, and the Chassidus on the Megilas Esther, and there's an awful lot of Chassidus on the Megilas Esther, is that you read the story of Esther, And then you learn Maamar Chassidus. And the Maamar Chassidus don't go from the worldly level to the godly level, they go straight to the godly level. When you learn the Bechlal Maamar Chassidus on Psukim, and when you learn Maamar Chassidus on Megilas Esther, the Chassidus of the Megila starts off Pashamayim. So when you learn a Maamar Chassidus from the Megilas Esther, HaMelech means the Eibishter, finished. Not it means the Eibishter, also it means the Eibishter. So in this episode that we mentioned earlier, where Haman comes to the palace because he wants to hang Mordechai, and at the same night, and without beknownst to Haman, Balayla hu nadadosh nas hamelech malkish alayla machashvedish was the Eibishter vayachal and a mashal cannot sleep, and he's up all night, and because he's up, he's paranoid, he's worried, he's nervous, he's afraid, and Haman shows up in the palace. So he comes into Chatzar Beis HaMelech HaChitzenu, where he's allowed to trespass without being punished. And the Achashverosh asks that he should come in, and he comes in, and the Eibishter says to him, Malases Be'ish, Asher HaMelech Chafetz B'Karei, and of course, and so on. So there's the story of Pashtus. Achashverosh, Haman, Mordechai, not being able to sleep, Zeresh, the gallows, and so on. But there's also the Pnimius, that Haman goes on the Eibishter. I'm sorry, Achashverosh goes on the Eibishter, HaMelech goes on the Eibishter, Haman goes on Klipa, and Mordechai goes on Kedusha, and so on. But when you learn in Chassidus, one of the things that's so beautiful about the way it's transmitted in Chassidus is that you learn l'chatchila l'mayla. Chassidus doesn't say, this is the pshat, but this is deeper. Chassidus l'chatchila gives you the Chassidish pshat. There's a story which I don't remember, but the Teichen HaSipur was that a great chassid of the Alter Rebbe became a chassid when he heard the Alter Rebbe learn a pasuk. I think it was on the Megilas Esther, and his question was, how do you have this and this l'mayla? In the Ilmus Hayanim, he was very impressed that a Rebbe wouldn't only explain Torah al pi pnimius hanyanim also. He would explain Torah only al pi pnimius hanyanim as if that was the only truth. And this Maamar is no exception. Yeah, that Haman says Yaveu Levush Malchus and Sus and Keser to Achashverosh. This is Klipa telling the Eibishter that this is what you need to do for Kedusha, and the way it plays itself out in the story is also explained in the similar light. And that's how this Maamar is going to go. This entire Maamar is going to explain these details. And this is what happens in this Maamar, and in a lot of the Maamarim, or old Maamarim of Chassidus, on Purim, where you don't explain the Maamar al pi Chassidus also. The Maamar is Chatchil Chassidus. And this is true in Torah and in Tanakh especially, but especially in the Sefer of Esther, because on the outside, the Sefer of Esther never mentions Hashem. Doesn't say his name. Pardon me, it makes no direct reference to him. It just seems like a power play, a story of politics and power and a rise and a fall and the kinds of things that happen historically over and over and over again. And it's a part of Torah. That every single detail of this story is a Gili Alakuz, it's a revelation of the Eibishter. First of all, on the practical level, how Teva played out, how nature plays out the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And second of all, on a spiritual level, where the story of Esther and the players of Esther reveal the Pnimiyas HaTorah, the Neshama of the Torah. So let's begin. Let's read just the pasuk, and I'll talk some more after I read the first lines. That Haman comes to Achashverosh with permission from the Chatzar HaChitzonu inward. And Achashverosh asks him, Ma nasa le'ish asher malases le'ish asher hamelech chafetz b'karei, what should be done to a man whom the king wishes to honor? And of course, I said to you before, and he offers the following: Yaveu Levush Malchus, they should bring a garment of royalty, asher lavish b'melech, which the king actually wore, v'sus, on the horse, asher rochav alav, which the king actually rode on. The crown of the king should be placed on his head. So now before we move on, I just want to share that in the next pasuk, Haman mentions the levush and the sus, the garment and the horse, and forgets the crown. And then a couple of psukim after that, Vayemer HaMelech El Haman kachas halavush v'asus kasher dibarta V'asei kein leMordechai HaYehudi HaYeshiv b'shar HaMelech al tapil dover Megilas Esther. That Ahasuerus says to Haman, take the horse and the tunic, the shirt, and the keser disappears. So on this itself there's a gewaldige Chassidus. And without going into the specifics, which I'm going to mention soon, and a little bit I discussed in this Maimer, but in other Maimerim, in Shari'ed and other places this is discussed at length, that Sus represents Kalim. Oisius. And the Levush represents Levush and Makifim. And the Keser represents Pnimius HaMakif. In other words, they all represent Inyanim which are higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. The Sus is the Kalim, which is higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. The Levush is the Eidus, which is higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. And the Keser is Pnimius of Seder Ishtalshlus. Pnimius of higher than Seder Ishtalshlus. So Haman, which is Elam Ateu, says to Achashverosh, which is the Eibishter, to take the Sus and the Levush and the Keser and give it to Mordechai, and Mordechai's tikkun. And that's the way the Megilas Esther in general goes, and that's how this Pasuk is explained, that there's an interface between Klippa and Kedusha, and Klippa on the outside is higher, and Kedusha is lower. But Bepnimis Hanyanim, Kedusha is the Kavanah, Kedusha is the right thing, is the truth, and Klippa isn't. So when Klippa is defeated by Kedusha, Klippa says to the Eibishter, I will give to Kedusha Sasus v'Salavush. So Haman, which is Teyu, says to the Eibishter to take the Sus and the Levush and the Keser, and immediately the Eibishter tells them take the Sus and the Levush. What happens to the Keser? So Bekitza and Nimras, the answer is that it's true that Teyu is higher than Tikkun, Klippa has a higher Sherish than Kedusha. And therefore there's a whole process of Avedas HaBirurim, where Klippa needs to take, or Kedusha needs to take away from Klippa. And then there are things which Klippa never had a hold on in the first place, and that's the Keser. Haman is thinking that since Teyu is higher than Tikkun, and Klippa gives its Nitzutz Kedusha, to Kedusha it should give the Keser also. So the Eibishter says to Haman, Hezachain. The Sus, which is the Kalim of Teyu, you could give to Kedusha. The Levush, which is the Eidus of Teyu, you could give to Kedusha. But the Keser Malchus, which is called Pnimius HaKeser, Keser Malchus was never in the Rishus of Kedusha, of Klippa. In the first place, it was only in the Rishus of Kedusha, and therefore Mordechai does not get the Keser Malchus from Haman. Mordechai gets the Keser Malchus directly from the Eibishter. That's how this pasuk is explained in Chassidus. Okay, our Maimed is going to connect all of these three things, Levush and Sus and Keser, to Nesinas HaTeira and Kabbalas HaTeira, because that's the spirit of this Maimed. But aside, the point that I shared with you says in a lot of places, in Chassidus, in Shari'ed, and now let's learn the Maimed. I'll start again from the beginning, okay? Yaveu, Haman said, let's bring Levush Malchus, a royal garment. Ashalov, which the king has worn. Vesus, and a horse. Asharocha, which the king has ridden on. Vashanit, and Keser Malchus Bereishe, the crown of the Eibishter, of the king, should be placed on Mordechai's head, says the Alter Rebbe Hinei. Inyan Levush Malchus, he doesn't at all mention the story. He goes straight to the Pnimius. The idea of the garment which the king wore is Inyan Masha Koso, what says by the Eibishter. Havaya Moloch, the Eibishter kings, but in order for him to be king over the world, Geyus Lavish, he puts on a garment of Gaiva. Shenis Lavish, Belevush Geyus, the Eibishter puts on a garment of Gaiva, Lias Melech HaElan, to become the king over the world. And of course, there's so much chassidus on these words, on Levush Malchus and Avaya Molech Geyas Lavish, and basically the point is that by the Eibishter everything is backwards, is the opposite of what it is by people. By people, when a person puts on a Levush of Gaiva, he's going from a lower level to a higher level. By the Eibishter Avaya Molech Geyas Lavish means Hashem lowers himself to be a Baal Gaiva. Hashem has nothing to do with the world. And Avaya Molech Geyas Lavish, he puts on a garment of Gaiva so that he should have enough of a relationship with the world, to be a king over the world, b'derech makif. In other words, the garment is not a concealment over the Eibishter. The garment is not a symptom of the Eibishter. The garment brings the Eibishter to have some relationship with the world, and the garment is Gaiva. the idea that Hashem is above you is a yerida. The idea that Eibush is about gaiva, geos, compared to you is a levush. And that's the pshat, Yaveu Levush Malchus. The garment that the Eibishter wears in order to be a king over the world. And of course, a king is a makif, king is melech, a king is melech, shmei nikra aleim, makifim. So the Levush Malchus represents that the Eibishter lowers himself enough to be higher than us. And that's the Levush Malchus. And then he continues, V'sus asher achav alav melech, the horse which the king rode. Says the Rebbe. Who in Yid Mashakasa Matan Teda, like it says in Tanakh, about what happened when the Eibishter gave us the Teda, Kitir Kaval Susach, when the Eibishter rides on his horse, Marakivesecha Yeshua, so the chariot, which the Eibishter rides, is named from Yeshua. And again, all this is explained, every single word is explained at length in Chassidus, and in Shariata, and so on and so forth. Yeah? But here it doesn't just say that the Sus is a vehicle which brings the Eibishter into the world. It connected specifically to Teda, to Matan Teda. And you'll see in the Maamar that all three things are going to be connected to Matan Teda. But let me just clarify, what's a sus? What's a horse? A horse is used to ride. Why can't the person walk? And of course the answer is because on a horse you can go much faster. From the Malaisim with Alter Rebbe Yadua, a famous story with Alter Rebbe, that Alter Rebbe Chassid, who had a son who was very talented and went off the right way and became a jockey, a horse racer. So when he came to the Alter Rebbe asked him, what's better, a fast horse or a slow horse? So he's a bit surprised. Alter Rebbe understood much about horse racing, which itself was a surprise to him. Alter Rebbe showed him that he knows the business. And then the Alter Rebbe asks him, what's better, a fast horse or a slow horse? So he looks at the Alter Rebbe in surprise, and he says, of course a fast horse. So the Alter Rebbe says, yeah, but if you go on a slow horse and you go off the right path, since you're going slowly, you get less lost. When you're going on a fast horse and you go on the wrong way, you get lost very quickly. So he said to the Alter Rebbe, yeah, Rebbe, about mechaptzach. When you realize you're on the wrong way, you can come back much quicker. What this chassid did not realize, what this young man did not realize, this was the whole point. And the Alter Rebbe went into dveikis, into a trance, and he said, Amachaptzach, when you realize. And this Yid realized that Rabbi was talking to him, that he was the fast horse that went very far off the derech. But as Machaptzach, he can come back very quickly, and of course that's the end of the story. So a horse is a merkava, is a chariot on which the Eibishter rides, but a horse has a speed, and that's the mashal of a sus from akifim, that it's kalim, it's oisius, that brings a lakus very quickly from a very high madrega. And derech agav, you have in the Maimarim that the Eibishter has a number of merkavas, right? You have the kruvim, which are keravia. Keravia means like a little boy. You have below that you have chanech, matat. Then you have keruvia, and then of course you have the merkava helyena, the atzilus, which is adam, and hard and atzilus is sus. A sus is also a merkava which carries a lakus, but it goes very quickly. And higher than sus is a tzvi, deidil tzvi, el efer hayolam, which you have in the Maamar of Pesach, that a deer is so fast that he's above Seder Shtashos completely, even faster than a horse. And all of these things are different madregas of Merkava. Here, Haman says to take the sus, which is Chitzenis HaKeser, I suppose. It's a very high level on which a lakus rides. And like I said, in the Maamar Chassidus, it explains that the sus is oisius that carry a lakus from the madrega of makif. So we explain Levush Malchus, and we explain sus. And in the Maimarim, they explain the words kitirka val susecha, the idea of merkava, and then the markavesecha Yeshua has explained that it's a high madrega in keser, shin ayin hayden, and so on. But then we continue, line 11. Vashen nitan keser malchus beresh. Haman also proposes that we should give Mordechai HaTzadik, Mordechai HaYehudi, the crown which the king wore should be placed on his head. So what's the crown of Pnimius Tanyam? And again, the Alter Rebbe doesn't start with the pshat and go to the Pnimius. The Pnimius is his pshat. Hu inyan masha kosov, the crown of the king is what says in the pasuk in Shir Hashirim, Ba'Torah she'oter alei imei b'yem chasanosei, which is Matan Teda, the Gemara says. B'yem chasanosei, b'yem simchas libei, b'yem chas, the Gemara says, b'yem chasanosei Matan Teda. The crown which his mother crowns him in, which is the day of his wedding, which is Matan Teda. And of course the wedding is the formal marriage, the Edison, And then B'yem Simchas Libe is the intimate marriage, which is much, much deeper, which is going to be when Mashiach comes. So, you know what says in Chassidus, yeah? That Imei, who's the Eibishter's mother? Ba'atara she'atar le'imei, goes on Yidden. Yidden are the Eibishter's mother. There's a whole sugi in Chassidus about Achaisi biti Achaisi imi. I'm forgetting the first part of the pasuk, but the Shlomo HaMelech is the very end of the Sefer Shir HaShirim, and Shlomo HaMelech is celebrating, and the words finished. I forgot the beginning of the pasuk about Torah she'at le'imei b'yem chasenasa b'yem simchas libe, and it's explained in Gemara and in Chassidus that Imei goes on Yidden. The Yidden are called the mother of the Eibishter. Now, since when are Yidden called the mother of the Eibishter? The Eibush doesn't have a mother, the Eibush doesn't have a father, and of course the idea of Imei is Bina, higher than Seder Ishtalshlos. Kuchabrichu or Lakus is Zoh, is the Midas Avatil, is the masculine in a Lakus, and Imei, which is Bina, goes on Yidden. And the crown which the Eibush wears comes from Yidden, the way Yidden are Kvayachal, higher than a Lakus, above a Lakus. And in some places in Chassidus and in Kabbalah it's brought that the Bina, which is also called Aim, is called Tshuva. And about Torah she'at le'imei means the Ke'echat Tshuva, we put the crown Kvayachal on the Meibishter. So all three things, the Levush brings the Eibishter in proximity of the world b'derech makiv. The Sus is the Merkava which brings the Eibishter into this world, but the fact that a horse runs quickly is a mushal for bringing a Lakus higher than Seder Ishtalshlos. And the crown comes from Imei, the way Yidden or Madreg of higher than Seder Ishtalshlos. And like I said, in this Maamar, all of these things are going to be explained, and they're going to be explained in the context of the idea that we got the Torah once, we got the Torah twice. So the Rebbe continues and he says on line 14, Kihine kol ha'bechines shenizgal b'matan Torah, everything that was revealed when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, gave us the Torah, nizgal gamkein bepurim b'mei Mordechai, was revealed also in the times of Purim, times of Mordechai HaYehudi. Shenem, like it says in the pasuk, and of course we all know this from the Maamar, from Tafshin Nun Beis. V'ki bel HaYehudim meiseh sherechelu laseis, that the Yidden reaffirmed or finalized their acceptance of the Torah which they had begun to do when the Eibishter gave us the Torah at Har Sinai. Ki b'matan Torah, when the Eibishter gave us the Torah, Shom Yisrael nasa v'nishma, when Yidden said nasa v'nishma, it was a chelu lases shayirak aschol, it was only a beginning. And it made Mordechai Gemara Kabbalah when the Eibishter, when the Yidden accepted the Torah second time in the times of Mordechai Yehudi, it was an end. And of course, in the Maamar of Kibbutz Yehudim, the Rabbi proposes that there's two Bimei Mordechais, one during the time of the Gzeira, when it came from Mesiras Nefesh, one is after the Nes, when it becomes from Kosses Lamor, from the fact that you find yourself in Golos. So it says in Chassidus, including in the Taka and the Kibbutz Yehudim, in Perek Daled, that Purim is higher than Matan Torah. V'haraya, as the pasuk says, and the Gemara explains it, that Purim, Matan Torah is only a beginning, and Purim is an end. So the Rebbe, of course, asks the Kasha, how could Purim be higher than Matan Torah? Matan Torah, Yidden were in the highest of level, they just came out of Mitzrayim, there was such Kelis Abrakim, and so on and so forth. Purim and Yidden were in a very low level, how could Purim be higher than Matan Torah? So the Rebbe explains. And the way the Rebbe says it, in other words, in certain Pratim, Purim are higher than Matan Torah, than Shavuos. And what's the word that the Rebbe offers? That by Purim, by Matan Torah, the Eibishter revealed himself. And the Eibishter's revelation made the Yidden's acceptance of the Torah something which you could argue was superimposed on them. That's why you have the Meidah, Rabbi Leiraisa, that I discussed before. A Jew can always say it was forced. What happened then? Yidden were in a time when being a Jew was going to cost you your life. And the way the story is brought in Torah Or from Alten Rebbe, and the only other one who brings it like this is the Megilas Esther from Yankiv Melissa. And it could be that it says in an earlier Sfara maybe that Haman was not killing Jews like Hitler killed Jews, indiscriminately. Haman was killing Yehudim. And remember, the traditional name of a Jew was not a Yehudi, the traditional name of a Jew was Ivri, Yivrei, Hebrew. And any Jew who would change his passport from Jew to Hebrew, from Yehudi to Ivri, would be off the hook. Because Haman was killing the Anshe Moshe, the people of Mordechai. Am Mordechai, yeah? What was Mordechai's crime? They wouldn't bow. It's called Yehudi, not because he comes from the Shevet Yehuda, Faket, Mordechai Shevet Binyamin. He's called Yehudi, as the Gemara says, because he's Kefer Ba'avei Zarah, denies idol worship. And then it's brought, anybody who's Kefer Ba'avei Zarah, it's two Gemaras. Yeah? In Megila it says it's Kefer Ba'avei Zarah. And there's another Gemara, I forgot where it is, they call it Kefer Ba'avei Zarah, is made of B'kol HaTeira Kula. You're automatically accepting the whole Teira. So, when Yidden adopted the title Yehudi, did a whole wonderful sikha. By the way, this is a good advertisement. Purim Tafshin Aleph. The second Purim, the Rebbe was in America, the Friedrich Rebbe. The Purim sikha is very long. And he tells the whole story as a political power play. It's unbelievably poignant and unbelievably realistic. He tells the whole story about how Yidden try to be like Goyim and how it backfires. Because Yidden are different than Goyim. When a Yid tries to be a Goy, it brings him all kinds of calamity. And when a Yid acts like a Yid, then all the miracles begin to happen. But the story of Purim was that Haman was after those Jews who were called Yehudim, who were Kefer B'Avodah Zarah, and therefore made the B'kol HaTeira Kula. And they had a recourse. They could run away, become an Ivri. The traditional name of the Jews was Ivri, and the reason the new name was created to identify the Jewish people, instead of Ivri, which means a foreigner, a griner, a fremde, the name Yehudi is because Ivri began to assimilate. They went to Bavel and they were honored as smart people, and the Goyim respected them. They began to assimilate, began to enjoy Golos Rachmana Litzlan. So Yidden who were not happy about this protested this by changing the name to the title Yehudi. And these were the people that Achashverosh tried to murder, tried to kill. Haman tried to kill. And they stood for a whole year, it says in Torah Or, in a state, a readiness of Mesiras Nefesh, and not one Jew for one moment thought a thought of running away and trying to save himself by becoming an Ivri, by assimilating, by hiding his Jewish identity, and so on. And this, of course, was the basis for the Nes, the Mesiras Nefesh of Yehudim, of Yidden. And therefore the Gemara says that Matan Torah is only a beginning, as Sesharei Chelu, and Purim is a Vekibul as an end. And our Maamar is going to analyze this pasuk Yaveu Levush Malchus against that backdrop. How you have by Matan Torah, Levush and Sus and Keser, and how you have by Purim when this was re-established, Levush and Sus and Keser. And we'll continue and we'll learn this in Mitzvah Hashem. We'll start Mitzvah next week. B'li neder.